Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the beautiful Antonio Carlotta. Antonia, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, this is seriously an honor for me. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are the great grandniece of Universal Studios founder Carl Laemmle. So, already you've got that feather in the cap. And the way that I found you, you are the creator and star of the YouTube series Universally Me, about the history of Universal Studios, about the history of the Laemmle Legacy. What gave you the inspiration to want to be doing this on a YouTube channel?
Yeah, my Uncle Carl was a great man, and I don't just say that because he's my family. Yes, he started Universal. He also did other amazing things, like he won a Supreme Court case against Thomas Edison. He invented the movie studio tour and the concept of the movie star as we know it today. He also saved hundreds of Jewish refugees. And he made, many of the Universal monster movies that we love,
Mhm.
Dracula, Phantom of the Opera, Frankenstein, all of those. For me, as I was growing up, obviously as a kid, what your family does doesn't mean too much to you usually.
Sure.
But as I got to grow up and learn more about what he had done, and as I started to realize that so many people had never heard his name, they didn't know any of his accomplishments, it just became my mission to like carry his legacy forward
Mhm.
and make his story known. And I guess growing up, a millennial growing up in this generation, one of the ways that it seemed most impactful that I could get his story out there was YouTube, right? It's this like growing land where you can share stories and reach millions of people. So that's
Right.
what I set out to do.
Well, you can also see her, yes, she does YouTube and she does it very, very well, but you can also see her in the documentary Carl Laemmle, which is available on Prime Video. So, like you said, you're doing it through YouTube, but you're also honoring his memory through film as well. So, what was it like to be a part of this documentary?
I mean, it was just so special. James Friedman, who made the documentary, he was so passionate about the project and learning as much as he could and passing it forward. So that was really cool. I, try to participate in not just YouTube, but yeah, film and TV, any opportunities that come my way. And it does feel in a way then like I'm living, I mean, even YouTube, it feels like I'm part of the industry or part of the medium that my family was too. So I know it's not exactly the same, but it's an extra level of connection that I feel.
No, and you know what? It's amazing because of you, there's a lot of people out there that even know how to say the name Lemley, let alone learning about him. And without him, honestly, and this isn't lip service, creating the Universal Monsters laid the foundation for the slashers that came in the 70s and 80s, which laid the foundation for what we got in the 90s and 2000s. So without him and the work that he did, horror would not be what it is today. So
One of the craziest things I learned recently was that the genre horror didn't exist before Dracula and Frankenstein came out. They were called thrillers or shockers. They were sort of a concept of a genre, but they really solidified the horror genre in film.
and it's amazing that you can say, that's in your blood. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's something that's a part of you forever. And I can tell you, I've met thousands upon thousands of people that would not be who they are today without the horror genre. And like I said, your great uncle really helped to do that. And so growing up, was horror a thing that was like very important to you? Or like was it earlier, like you said, like it's a family thing. It's not really that big of a deal.
So I did love horror from an early age. Unfortunately, I can't say, oh, it's because of my lineage and I was like honoring them through loving horror. But for some reason, maybe just because it was like a little bit scandalous or maybe something I wasn't supposed to like, from like I always wanted to be a grown up or a bigger kid or whatever,
Sure.
even when I was little. So I loved horror. At home, we had all the movie channels from a young age, so I'd find those horror films and watch them. And when I was in, I think fifth through eighth grade, I started hosting scary movie nights at my place, which to me was
Oh,
so fun. And I don't think any of my friends ever really understood what they were in for, but I'd go to the local video store, which at the time was, I think it was called like Video World or something like that. And I'd, get as many scary movies as I could find. I think I always had this idea we were going to stay up all night and watch 8 movies in a row, and we'd always watch like two. Um, and and then yeah, I'd have all my friends over and we'd eat junk food and watch movies. So
that's
I
so
have
awesome,
always,
man.
yeah, loved them. I remember getting It was a popular one that we would watch back in the day. I think like The House on Haunted Hill. Once the scary movie parodies came out too, we would like close the night a lot of times with those, which again was so wildly inappropriate, but we
Yeah, but
thought they were like hilarious.
it's a palate cleanser. After you've watched all these horror movies, you're still getting that horror, but it's funny enough to like,
Exactly.
get that, I can go to bed happy now.
I think that's how I could talk my friends into it, right? Like, I'm gonna freak you out all night, but then we're gonna watch this really funny movie that your parents won't let you watch at home.
Right, right. Come on over to the Carlotta house. We'll take care of you.
Yes.
So it's amazing to see that you've been into horror for such a long time, and I do want to let everybody know I have all of her social media links and YouTube link down in the description. So please make sure you're following her on social media. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel. Make sure you're hitting that bell to get your notifications and hitting that thumbs up. It helps to push out into the algorithm more than you know. But in order to be a part of the horror genre the way that you are, and to be such a fan the way that you are, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now, Antonia, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Antonia, the first horror movie you watched was
Silence of the Lambs. I
what an
started
amazing
big.
start. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's such a heavy movie, man. Like, and especially like as a kid, there's so much of that movie that goes over your head that you don't completely understand.
I didn't understand it, and I'm also grateful because, I've watched it again since, and I watched it in preparation for this today. Um, Yes, it's such a heavy, 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 dark movie. And as a kid, a lot of it just bounced off of me. I think I thankfully didn't have like the context of the world yet to know what like 60% was going on.
Right, right. Well, and it's one of those movies that still holds up today. It's that slow burn that you constantly feel uneasy, you constantly feel unsettled. And do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen Silence?
So I was at I reached out to the girl because I was curious about this. I was invited to this birthday party. This girl, Helen, so I just asked her because I was the one little kid invited to a birthday party of kids that were all about 4 years older than me. We did gymnastics together. She said she did gymnastics between the ages of 9 and 13, which means I would have been between the ages of like 5 and 9 when I watched it. My guess is I was probably in that 8-year old zone.
Mm,
So I was probably about 8 or 9.
right. Well, first
So
off,
a
Helen,
little
thank
too
you.
early.
You're the shit. Please, like
Yeah.
all the flowers to you. Thank you for inviting her because without that, she may not be here today. So,
That's right.
um, man, and like I said, watching it at a friend's party, like I've always felt like when people watch their first horror movie at a friend's house, it's that thing where it's like, I have to do this because they're doing it. And if I don't do it, I'm the wuss here.
I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, it's all a little bit of a blur. Like, I don't necessarily remember that it was a big scandalous choice or that I was worried about it or anything. I just kind of remember they put this movie on and we were watching it. And I could tell once we were watching it, like, oh, this movie isn't for me. I shouldn't be watching this right now. But it made me, I think, then a little more excited to see it through. Again, I
Right.
probably didn't follow everything. I didn't get everything. I do remember the girls sort of screaming and giggling a lot. I was just like thrilled to be along for the ride.
Right. You're the people that you look up to and you're there
Yes.
with them. That's
I
that's
was
so
the
rad.
one little kid at this birthday party. I was going to do all the big kid things with them.
Right. Right. Not scared at all. Not scared
No.
at all. Please keep that light on. Um, So, we're talking about the Silence of the Lambs, and like I said, I still feel like today this has such a huge cultural impact. I mean, this has been parodied nonstop. People that have never seen the Silence of the Lambs still know the Chianti line.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
They still know Hello Clarice. Like there's still so many things from
Hmm.
this movie they know, even if they've never seen it. And I feel like that's when it shows how impactful a movie is. So with all the impactful scenes that happens in The Silence of the Lambs, which was the one that affected you the most?
So for me, it's I guess a short series of scenes that happens. As you said, like the movie is there's so much tension. There's such a build, like it's a slow burn through the whole film. And then there's when the scenes when like Hannibal finally lets loose with the guards and he escapes and the one guy is in the elevator shaft, the other guy is strung up looking like an angel. And then Hannibal Lecter is they take what they think is one of the guards in an ambulance, but it turns out it's him, and you get the big reveal. That is my favorite and most impactful scene from the movie.
Right.
I think
'Cause-
I think it's because like you've just been leaning in this whole movie, and that segment is just like the adrenaline release.
Mhm. Well, I mean, and you have like that moment in the ambulance. I just love it so much because the guy's sitting there, then all of a sudden you see him sit up, and then he pulls that face off, and you're just like,
Yes.
no, he's supposed to be dead in the elevator shaft. Like you're thinking
Yes.
you're like, really? He died because he fell down an elevator shaft, and then you see him do that sit up, and you're just like, get the fuck out of here. That's insane. Love that.
Yeah, and because even the elevator thing, right? Like that, it's there. I guess it's like slow tension, then it's intense tension, right? You've got the drips, you've got the guys looking, and
Yeah.
the right, like everything is just coming to such a boil. And yeah, as when he sits up, like it all explodes.
Well, and especially because throughout the movie, you're like, this is the guy that everyone's worried about. Like, yeah, he's extremely intelligent, but he just sits there and talks. Like, why are we so
Hmm.
scared of this guy? And then finally, you're like, okay, touche,
Yeah.
touche, Mr. Lecter. Um, but in this movie too, there's so many scenes. Like obviously you're scared of Hannibal Lecter, but you also have the Buffalo Bill stuff, which
Hmm.
was a little bit ahead of its time, and maybe especially today a little insensitive um, to the trans community because a lot of people think, oh, if you're trans, you're a killer that rips people's skin off, type thing, which still unfortunately gets talked about today. But you also have those scenes like when they're in the basement with the night vision, and you're just like you're
Yes.
holding your breath the whole time, like, oh, come on, man, come on. So, like, to
When
be
he's like
a
reaching
young,
out and almost touching her in the night vision, I like almost feel like I can smell his hand in those
yes.
moments. It's such a, or like feel the heat of her breath bouncing off of him. It's filmed so well. So,
Hmm.
so well.
And he just had to be a showman, and that's what got him in trouble, man. That's what got him caught
Hmm.
there at the end. But I just can't imagine because I didn't see this movie for the first time, honestly, until I was probably 13 or 14 years old. I came into Silence very, very
Oh,
late.
so you were like so old.
Yeah, I was a geriatric by the time I had seen this. But I couldn't imagine being an 8-year old and trying to decipher all the stuff that's going on in this movie. Like, that's super, super impressive.
I think it was like my brain probably processed creepy guy, dead people, creepy guy, dead people.
Just put those
Girl
two together.
yelling,
It always
girl
flew
yelling
together.
in a well. I didn't think too deeply into again context and
Sure.
greater meaning.
Hmm. Well, and I mean, obviously now, Silence is part of a franchise. We always think it's, a lot of, especially non-horror fans don't realize that it is a franchise that this is based around. But so I always ask when we do talk about a franchise, which film in the Hannibal Lecter franchise would you say is your favorite?
I haven't seen them all. I
Oh,
I think I don't know. I couldn't tell you why, but I've not gone through the whole thing. And every time that people talk about them, I think I probably saw it was Hannibal, the first sequel.
I
Like,
think it was and then Red Dragon after that, I
yeah. So I
believe.
think I saw Hannibal when it first came out, but I really don't have memories of it. And I never followed with anything else. Every
Mhm.
time someone brings it up, I'm like, oh, yeah, I should really get into those. The first is so good. They're continuing to make these. They must be good, but I haven't.
I've I've seen them all. I still think Silence is miles ahead of every other one, which is not
Hmm.
saying anything bad. I mean, if you're behind the Sounds of the Lambs, I mean, it's a iconic. The word iconic
Right.
gets thrown around a lot. Sounds of the
It's
Lambs is an
iconic.
iconic movie. Like I said,
Absolutely.
I think of this like I think of The Shining. Like people that have never seen The Shining still know here's Johnny. You know, they still
Yeah.
know the Grady twins. That's how I feel about Sounds of the Lambs. Even if you've never seen it, there's so much about it that you know about. So, um, and now in Hollywood, remakes, requels, sequels, kind of all the rage. They're loving to do that. Would you like to see them try to take another attempt at the Silence of the Lambs, either through a remake or a requel, following Clarice after the events of this?
I think, well, in terms of a straight remake, I think that we still have maybe another 20 years before that's necessary. There's, as you said, like so much that still holds up about this film that one day I think it'll seem antiquated enough that a revamp is like worth it or worthy, and that'll inspire people to go back to watch the original. I don't think we need that yet. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing other offshoots, reinterpretations, things like
Mhm.
that. I'm open to new stories inspired by.
Well, and like I said, I would love to see, and I don't want to spoil it because you really should check out Red Dragon and Hannibal,
Okay,
just
I
Hannibal
will.
Rising, just to make you still got to see them, you still
Yeah.
got to watch them. But I would
I
like to
fall into
see,
this trap because so much of my channel is about, the 1910s to 1930s. And then, of course, I mean, I guess I am growing up now, but there's such a gap in like my
sure,
horror viewing. I've watched so much from the early days. I watched so much, I guess, from like my youth, and then I've missed just whole chunks of
right.
horror that I'm always trying to catch up on.
Well, the thing is, like, if somebody tells you they've seen every horror movie, I'll show you the biggest liar on the planet.
Yeah.
I hate the whole "you're not a real horror fan if you've never seen" argument. I think that's a joke.
There's a
Um,
billion out there, and there's a million new ones every day. And some of the best ones are small films, some of the, ones not worth watching are some of the bigger films. It
right.
depends. And there's
You talk
something
about some
for
of this.
everyone, right?
Well, you're right, and you talk about some of the smaller ones being the best. We're looking at you, the dark and the wicked. But obviously, horror started for you at a very young age, and it's something that's been in your blood for a very long time. But here for a second, I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Antonia? What is your
It's
favorite horror movie?
That's so funny. Okay, if we're talking of like all time, what I think one of the best is, of course, I have to go all the way back to the 30s and say The Bride of Frankenstein. Every time I watch that movie, I think that it is just so brilliant and well done. It's such a great infusion of horror, of comedic elements, of making you both sympathize with the monster but fear the monster. So I
Sure.
love it. But I had no idea we had a celebrity in our midst because whenever I talk about my favorite modern horror film, I talk about Scream.
Oh, stop blushing over there. Knock it off. She likes it because of Nev, not you. And I really do feel like Scream started. It really put a needle into the arm of the horror genre in 1996. It really made it hip again. And I know I sound so geriatric when I say it like that, but it made horror cool at that moment. Where
Hmm,
before Scream, a lot of the
totally.
people in that age frame were like, scary movies are cool at Halloween, but that's it. Or at sleepovers, but it wasn't like a cool thing to go out and watch horror
Right.
movies. And then Scream came along and it was like, God damn it, I'm in. So,
And it's so like one of the things that I love. So I will always say in the horror space, horror comedy is my favorite genre. And it has such a fun, like self-awareness. It's so meta that it just makes it so, and it's a movie that I can watch and catch new jokes and catch like
yeah.
little references all the time. It was so smart.
Hmm. And like I said, it's one of those movies that I'm never happy if a movie fails. Never. But thank God Wes Craven's New Nightmare dived, because if it didn't, we might have gotten more meta Freddy Krueger and we might not have
Hmm.
ever gotten meta Scream. So I feel like, New Nightmare walked so Scream could run. And it worked out for the best, because I agree with you. I have the tattoo of Edward Monk's The Scream. You can't really see it,
Oh yeah, I
but
see
that was
it.
totally inspired by Scream. And my
I
cousin, who I
love
went with,
that.
was like, I was gonna go get Ghostface. I was 15 when I got this. We went to my cousin's house, and my cousin was like, "How about you get the painting instead? You don't always love horror." Thanks, Dale. I have had an amazing time, Antonia, talking to you about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie, some of your lineage and your background. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to Silence of the Lambs, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking Silence of the Lambs on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, zero skulls being not effective, five being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Antonia, what would your ranking of the Silence of the Lambs be?
That's a five skulls. That's an easy five skulls.
Yes. I
That's
figured, but my script told me I had to ask. So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, all of Antonia's links are down in the description. So please make sure you're following her on social media. Please make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel so you can check out all the amazing content she has, because had I not done that, I would have never known how to pronounce Laemmle the right way, and I still would have looked like a dumbass every time I said his name. So she is
happy to be
very
of
informative in
service.
her videos. Yes, but it's not just that, like the informative nature that you have in all your videos, the live streams that you do. You guys will have a great time going and catching up on her backlog of videos. So please make sure you're doing that. Antonia, please don't go anywhere. I have a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.